Hi all, welcome to CyberWarFare AWS Cloud Red Team course. In this module, we will discuss about how attacker gather more informations or more credentials inside the AWS environment. So this is called a credential access. That means if you have enough privilege to extract more credentials within their AWS environment. So let's see how attackers gain access of more credential with higher privilege users or higher privilege roles within the AWS infrastructures. So let's discuss. So you can see here in this diagram we have one unprivileged user. Means this user doesn't have much rights, but still he can have a read access. And there is one policy which is attached to this user is called Sts Assume Policy. So basically what it does, Assume Policy will allow you to assume roles if your ARN is there in their trusted relationship. So you can see here there is user, and other end there is one role which is called privileged role, which have enough privileged on these resources, and there is policy which is same like assume role policy, but in their trusted relationship the ARN dimension of this user. So the principle which is mentioned here in this role is belongs to this user. That means this user can assume this role. So this role can be assumed by this user. This is called a credential access. How this user can assume this role, how this user can gather the credential of this role, and how they can perform the resources which is not there initially, but after performing this assume role, he can gather or he can extract more credentials within the AWS environment. So let's discuss one by one. How does it work? So first thing we are going to discuss here to check what privileged a user have if there are any policy which is attached to this user. So let's check. The first thing we are going to show. Currently you can see here I already configured my CLI and I found that using assume breach methodology there is one user. I have their access ID and credentials. So let's see if what rights or what users access key ID I have. Sorry, I have to specify a profile name, otherwise it will take my default profile demo. So I configured here in demo profile. So you can see here the key which I have is belongs to non-priv user. So let's see what privilege, what policy does this user have, and how they can assume the role, and how they can gather the credential, access the credential within AWS environment to perform any higher privilege rights or higher privilege actions. You can see here second thing what I'm going to perform is to list it down all the policy which is attached to this user. So the second operation what I'm going to do lists all managed policy that are attached to this specific user. So I'm just copying this one. I know the username is non-priv. Okay, you can see here this is the policy Sts Assume Policy attached to this user. Now further action what I'm going to take is to find out the information about this policy. I'm just copying this command from here. Open a new tab, paste it here. I have to specify the policy ARN. So this is the policy ARN which is attached to non-priv user. Yes, paste it here. So this is the information about this policy. The policy default version is v1. This is the policy name. This is the ARN when it's created and when it's updated. Now what next? What is the permissions there in that policy? I'm going to explore. So now third thing which I'm going to do is list information about version of specified managed policy. Let's find out what are the how many versions this policy does contain. So this will give the information about the versions. So I just put it down this one. You have to specify the policy ARN. Just copy this one from here. Perfect. Okay, so you can see here there is only version 1 v1 and this is the default version also. So now what information that is contained, this is my next task. So now what we are going to do is we are going to retrieve the information about this specific policy, that what permission does this policy contain, because this is the policy which is attached to a user. So I have to specify. Okay, so let's open a new tab. I have to specify this policy ARN as well as version ID. So let's copy the policy ARN from here. Now version ID. So you can see here only one version is there, which is default version. So I specify the version ID as a v1. It will give me the result of permission which is contained there in this policy. So you can see here, this is a policy which is effect means allow. This is allow permissions, action, Sts assume role, and resources all. So these users can assume all the roles because resources is mentioned in star. Now what next? So you can see here this user have a rights, doesn't have any other rights, only have a rights to assume a role. Now what resources? So it's mentioned is a star, so you can assume the role of any resources there in AWS. What next? So we find out that you can see here in the PPT, we found out that this user A have assume role permissions here, which all the resources, but if this user wants to assume any role, there should be a second criteria. The second criteria is the role which this user wants to assume in their trusted relationship. The ARN of this user should be specified. That is, explicitly mentioned that only this user can assume this role. So it will be there in assume or role, policy of this roles. Let's discuss about how many roles are there and which roles this user can assume. Okay, so what next I'm going to do, we are just going to list it down all the roles there in AWS IAM in this account. Let's open a new tab, paste it here. It will give me the result of all the roles which is there in AWS IAM. The most important thing which I mentioned, that trust relationship which is there in this statement, assume role policy document. You can see here this is the statement and this is the principal name who can assume this role. So this is the role name, ABC role, this is the role name, and lambda function can assume this role. So you can see the actions, assume roles. Second thing, let's see here, this is the SSM role and this is the SSM who can assume this role. Third one is EC2 can assume this role. But what we are going to looking here, we are going to look here, is there any role which this user can assume? So we have to look on the role side. So let's move to that. This is the AWS servicer role. SSM can assume this role. This is for ECS, Elastic Container Service can assume this role. Elastic Load Balancing can assume this role. RDS, Relational Database, can assume this role. Support can assume this role. Trusted Advisory can assume this role. EC2 again can assume this role. Again EC2 can assume this role. Again EC2 can assume this role. And this is that. You can see here, when you looking for the principal, this is the ARN of non-privileger. You can also do grab command to grab this particular portion, but I'm going to explore all the roles which is there, and you can see that they are in the principal. This is the AWS. You have to specify the same AWS account user or the user which is there in another account. So you have to change this user account options here. You can see there in other role you have to specify the service, but in this role you have to specify under principal sections AWS, and here you have to specify ARN of the user who can assume this role. So you know that EC2 assume role is the role name which can be assumed by this user A. So user A can assume EC2. This is the role which user can assume. So we already know that there is a two criteria. One is Sts Assume Policy should be there, which is already there here. You can see here, this is the policy and this is the information that this contain. So this is the Sts Assume Policy which this user have, and this role have the ARN of the user who can assume this role, or who this role can trusted. So this is how, if both the criteria is met, this user can request for a credential, for a temporary credential. This is why we call it a credential access. So we are getting the credential of the roles. This is valid for a temporary purpose, and we can perform all the actions on behalf of the role and the rights which roles have. So let's check what rights does this role have. So now next point which I'm going to do is retrieving the information about this particular role. Let's copy this one, open a new tab, let's paste it here. Role name, I have to copy it from here and just paste it here. Okay, sorry, I have to specify AWS. So you can see here, this is the information about the roles. This is already there in the list roles command, but just to give you the more detailed information. Role name, role ARN, created this, and this is the principle which this role can trusted, and this role can assume this role. So this is how you can get the information about this thing. But what next? I have no idea about what permission does this role contain, what further action this role can. I only have idea that this is the user who have STS role permissions, and this is the role. So this user can assume this role, but what the permissions or policy does this role contain? So I'm looking for all this thing. So what next? My next thing is to list it down all managed policy which is attached to this role. Let's copy this one, same like we did for a users. Now we are doing for a role. Oh, sorry, let's copy here. Copy. You have to specify the role name, so I'm just copying the role name from here. And paste it here. So you can see here there is policy name administrator access which is attached to this role, which can be assumed by non-priv user. So which can assume by non-priv user. Now what permission does this contain? It seems like it's the administrator access, but let's check for what permission actually does this contain, the policy. And just copy this one. Now we have to do the list of version, but by default I'm just using a version 1 here. And here you have to specify the ARN of this policy. So this is the policy ARN. I copy it from here and paste it here. That's all. Okay, so you can see here, yeah, exactly, this is the administrator policy, because effect is mentioned that allow access actions, all the action resources on all the resources. So this is called administrator policy because he can perform all the action on all the resources. So this is how you can identify that this is the administrator policy which is attached to this role, and non-priv user which doesn't have any privilege initially, but after assuming this role can perform administrator access. Let's see how he can retrieve the credential and how he can perform this role. So we can see here we have the information that this user can assume this role because user have this policy, role have this policy. Now how this credential access work? So once both the criteria is met, this user a request for a temporary token of this privileged role. You can see here, I'm just pointing. The first point is this user request for a temporary token for this role. Once both the criteria is met, this user received this temporary token which is valid for 10 minutes around, and this token, after configuring the token with API or CLI, this user can perform all the actions which is belongs to this role. So this is how credential access works. So once you have a credential, you can access all these things. Initially it is not there, but after assuming this role, you can perform this thing. So this is how you can perform the red teaming if you don't have any rights, and if you want to have a credential, if you have a rights to assume some role, you can gather those credentials. This is called credential access phase in a red teaming. So let's check how this user can perform this thing. So this is the command which is used to retrieve temporary credentials of assume roles. Perfect. Open a new tab here. Specify. You have to specify the role ARN. You have to specify the role ARN. Role ARN is this one. This is the role, this is the policy ARN, and this is the role ARN, which can be assumed by this role, which I configured. You have to specify the name role session. Let's check what is this thing. Okay, so you can see here I'm just copying this command to retrieving the temporary credential for this role. Just copy till here. The same command, just mention the name, and you have to specify the name. You can mention AWS CLI or any name which is for tracking purpose. That's it. And of course you have to specify the user profile where your credential is there, then only you can perform this action. So this demo, you can see here it's there in my demo. In demo profile I have this non-preview user. So after requesting this one, you will get a temporary credential. In temporary credential you will get a access key ID, secret access key, as well as this token. Now you have to configure your CLI according to this one, and you can perform all the action. So you can see here I have another terminal. There's no credential configured already. Let's check AWS STS get Cola identity. So there is no credential is configured in this sections. You can see here there is no credential is configured. So let's configure this credential. So this is a command using Linux here in this terminal. So I'm using export command. If you are using Windows, you can use set command. So I'm just copy this one. And I have to configure this in this terminal because there is no configuration already there. No, so I just configured here. Access key, you have to specify the access key ID. I just copy the access key from here, and I have to configure here. Perfect. This is the access key I exported. Second thing, you have to export the secret. This is the ID and specify. You have to specify the secret. Here you have to specify here. Copy, and here you have to copy this secret from here. And at the end you have to specify session token. Here. So let's copy the session token from here. And I have to configure. So you can see here I configured the access key ID, access key as well as token. Now let's check what rights I have. So I just using the same command which I mentioned previously, get caller identity. Previously I don't have any credential configured here, so now I configured this credential, which is temporary credential, and you can see here this is the I have the permission of this role, assume role, and this is the same EC2 assume role here. You see, like, let's check if I have any access on these machines. AWS environment, yes, you can explore, you can access the AWS environment as an administrator. So this is how you can see here. The initially this user doesn't have any permissions initially, but after that he got temporary token using credential access of this user, and he can perform all the action which is belongs to this role performed by this user using a credential access. That's why this is the phase in red teaming called credential access, and this is the process how a user got a credential of using any methods he have. So here we mentioned the assume roles methods, or there is a lot more way to getting the credentials. So this is applicable on the IAM. If you are assuming the IAM services, or if there are any misconfiguration in the IAM, you are not basically set who can assume and who can't assume this role. This user can take advantage of this permissions and can access the credential and can perform all the operations. So this is all about how this user can perform red teaming in red teaming in AWS environment using this credential access tactics. So that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you.